Got it.
All right.
Hi all, welcome to the Global Game Jam Malaysia bonus round. So today's session, we're going to have the Game Jam and Beyond session with Shawn Back from Networks, Hafiz Azman from 7-Bit Games, and Chang Zhen from Akira Assassin. So basically, it's going to be a session of these veteran game jammers and kind of talk about their experience as a game jam, as a jammer, and then how they went about to kind of like commercialize their games that they made during the game jam, and what's their experience like. Do they advise you to do that as well, or that's something that you probably say no, don't do that, it's crazy. We'll talk more about that, but without further ado, I'll just want to do a quick introduction to everyone while I actually play a video trailer, and then I'll introduce one by one. So the first one, and they'll introduce themselves after their trailer. So the first one is Unicorn on Unicycles from Weirdworks, and the panelist we have today is Shawn Back.
Whenever I dream of you. Wherever you go there too. Whatever happens, I'll be true to you. My days with you are colorful and bright. Come join me on a ride into the light. Oh, I so adore my angel unicorn, living in a fantasy we're free, flying over land and over sea, ocean forever, you and me, forever and evermore. My angel unicorn.
Okay, just try to get back to the one without this thing. I hit embedded from YouTube. Shawn, so introduce yourself and your background.
Okay, hi, I'm Shawn. I'm a game developer, of course. Been making games since 2011. Was solo for a while, joined a few game companies and went back to solo. Now I am a Unity field engineer working at Unity Technologies, and I also still run Weirdworks Productions with my partner JT Yen, and we're a team of 9 developers right now. I was also once a lecturer at KDU University, which is now UOW, Wollongong. And yeah, we're still making games. And this is Unicorns and Unicycles is basically our latest game, probably the first game in Weirdworks developed with a team bigger than 2 guys. And yeah, check it out. It's on Steam right now, and the Apple App Store and Google Play.
Thank you, Shawn. Okay, let's move on to. Oops, continues to play. Slideshow again. Move the slides. Yay. The next one. Oh, it has to end first, I guess. Your unicorns is haunted. It doesn't allow me to move to the next slide. So
Unicorns on Unicycles too.
yeah, it's like keep coming back. Okay, never mind. Okay, next one, I'll play the trailer. This is the only one I found online. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, Hafiz, can you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone. So my name's Hafiz. I'm from Seventh Week Games. I'm the lead designer, composer, and programmer. And mostly we make rhythm games. And so far, both our two rhythm games have been actually single button rhythm games. So like we are very much in a niche of one button rhythm games. And our company has around 10 people, most of them part time, around like 4 or 5 full time. Yeah.
Cool. I'm trying to know you speech down. Yay, that works. So this one no audio. Sorry, Chang Zhen, this is all I can get. But can you introduce yourself over this awesome GIF of your game, Waker?
Okay, so I'm Chang Zhen. I'm currently a third year student in DigiPen Singapore, studying to be a programmer and game designer. Usually I make action games and games with randomly generated elements.
Cool. Thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because then we can focus on this awesome devs that we just kind of glanced the creation of their crafts. But today we're gonna talk a bit deeper on their experience as a game jammer and as a game dev themselves. So let's start with the first question. Can you share what was your first game jam and which year was that? And probably what's your experience joining the first kind of like game jam for yourself? Yep. Anyone want to start?
Yes, I'll start. Yeah. So I remember my first game jam was organized by Leet and Unity. It was at Cyberjaya. I think it was 2011, 2012. And the theme of the game jam was one button. I managed to convince about, I think 6, 7, or 8, I think 8 people to join me in a jam. And they put us in a room and we tried to just figure things out on our own. It was a really fun experience. I came out of it being actually addicted to game jams. And as the developers who know me know, I started organizing a lot of game jams since locally.
A little bit too many, right?
Yeah, a little bit too many.
Okay. 2000, I think it was 2010. It was in Cyberjaya. You came all the way from PJ to Cyberjaya and finding food and all that over the weekend. That was probably rough. But yeah, they provide food, right? I forgot what's the...
I don't think so. No, there was no food. No,
but there was Bread Baby at the point in time, right? Yeah,
yeah.
Who dropped by and kind of like, talk to you guys. Okay, cool. So was it nerve-wracking? Was it like nervous? Who the other 7 or 8 people that you managed to convince? Are they your peers, friends, or how does that go about?
Yeah, there were friends who weren't in the game industry at all. Just convinced them to come and join because I had some Unity experience of my own. I just started, I guess you could say I just started making games for a few months. And then I wanted to put it to the test, like to prove myself in some capacity. So managed to make a full game, complete with title screens, music, sound effects, and all that. I remember rushing it out at the very last minute. People were shouting, like the deadline is, 2 minutes away. I was just still coding away the UI, but we finished it. I was quite proud of it and eventually we eventually commercialized it a few years later.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That was 2010, so that's about 12 years ago. Let's move on to Hafiz. So we're doing by age, I guess. So Hafiz, what's your first game jam and which was that and what was that like?
Yeah, I think I owe my whole career in game jams probably to Shawn, because 2014 was my first game jam, and I'm pretty sure it was Shawn who invited me over, and that was at KDU actually. And the game I made for that was A Dance of Fire and Ice, which we eventually commercialized like 5 years later, because I was still in university at the time, so I didn't really have time to properly work on it. But yeah, as a first game jam, it was interesting because it was my first time making a game in Unity. So it was kind of hard. Like I didn't have that much experience in Unity. I did use it for my internship, but it was making an app. So this was my first time like trying to work with audio and stuff like that. Yes, it was a rush. I think the second day was a total all-nighter. I finished at like 6 in the morning or something like that. But yeah, I did get it done. It had no polish whatsoever, but it worked. And like there were people who liked it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I still remember you were sitting on the sofa and then it was Ludum Dare, I believe. Number
Yes,
30,
Ludum Dare.
32 or 30 something, right?
I
One
can't
of-
remember.
Yeah, one of the few Ludum Dare that I joined. I think among the first few that Ludum Dare that Sean hosted. And yeah, that was fun. And you mentioned specifically about you choose to pick up Unity because you've done development on Flash before. And you use the game jam sort of like, hey, let's try to do more games on Unity kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. So part of the reason why I do game jams is definitely because of the tech. So I try to do something I haven't done before, whenever I do a game jam, which means that a lot of times it doesn't work out. Like the last game jam I did, C game jam, that didn't work out at all, because I was trying to do something that was too difficult than the time I had for the time I had. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to Chang Zhen. So, yep, the same
So
question.
my first game jam was the Ludum Dare 30. It was in August 2014. So at the time I was my programming knowledge was like fresh out of Khan Academy sort of level. I never did any studies. And then I stumbled upon Ludum Dare and just decided to do something fun. It was a 48 hours thing, but I took it really relaxed because I wasn't expecting anything out of it. But then when it's done, because all I could draw was like draw shapes and render text and stuff like that. So I put together something very basic and just submitted it. But then I think the comments and the feedback really, and after that I joined more Ludum Dare and really made me felt like, maybe this is something I should be doing because it felt really fun.
Okay.
The thrill of completing something for 8 hours.
Yep. And
Yeah.
also you mentioned about the feedback, right? So
Yeah.
just to check, when you join your first Ludum Dare, if it's 30, it's 2014, right? Were you doing at home or were you just online, or you went to a jam site?
I was doing it
I'm in a
at
Zoom
home
call on the chat
online
first.
because I had no idea about anything.
Okay,
So I just saw it online and just decided to do it.
cool.
Yeah.
So only after that, so you don't have your first game jam experience was purely at home making a game within limited time. You don't have any interaction with other jammer, kind of thing. You just submit it, and the feedback is the one that keep you going, right? You said about the players was commenting and saying they like your game, and is that the one that drove you to the next game jam and all that?
Less about they like my game because it wasn't really that good, but it was more that people were telling me I could do this, I could do that, and they really felt like I could improve
Okay.
and get better.
So the constructive feedback kind of like make your game better, and you kind of took it and then want to improve on that. Cool. So following out that, Chang Zhen, so from the solo online game jam at Ludum Dare, how many years after that, how many game jams after that you actually joined a physical or community-based game jam where you actually meet other jammers?
Physical, I would say around 4. Yes.
4 years
'Cause
after
I
that.
did a lot of online, but for physical it was very little. I only realized that there's like physical game jams when around like 2018.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. That's 4 years of soloing game jam online, and just submitting. That's cool. Okay, that's definitely an interesting experience as well. So let's go back to the next question. We go back to Shawn. I know you probably don't have the counts, but I'm just going to ask anyway. How many game jams have you participated over the years, and which game jam format that you prefer the most, whether it's Global Game Jam, Ludum Dare, or 70 FPS, or any of those? And if you don't mind, can you share why you like that format the most?
Yeah, I don't have the official count, but I do remember counting or listing them down. Not all official, not all completed, but I think it's safe to say close to 20. Chang Zhen has probably done more. I love doing Ludum Dare the most, especially doing it solo, because I like to challenge myself. I like to see game jams as a way to explore either new tech or new disciplines that I've never done before. So sometimes I do join game jams in teams where I contribute as a sound designer, or I write the story. So usually tackle areas where I'm weak at. So things like narrative design, can be quite a challenge to me that I've never done before. So I like to take game jams as a way to challenge myself, or I want to try out some new tech, or want to try or exploring a particular game idea that might become something in the future. Yeah.
Cool. How about you, Hafiz? How many game jams do you keep
Oh,
track?
I think the count is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, not a lot at all. But that also includes like very informal game jams. What we like to call birthday jams. So we do this like we've done 2 of these so far, where like we just wanted to make a game for someone's birthday, and then we were like, let's make it a game jam, and then me and another guy work together to make a game. So excluding that, it'll be 5, but including it, it'll be 7. And that's the C game jam. I've joined 3 times. Ludum Dare, I've joined once. And I did this one called a 1-bit jam, where your game had to be 1 bit. And that was like in 4 hours. So that's like a really small one.
In 4 hours.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. Wait, how do they deal with the time zone? Do you have to start at odd hours? I mean, like...
I can't remember. Like this was a while ago.
Okay.
It might have been a bit longer, but I remember I took 4 hours personally for it, because it being a 1-bit game jam means you can only use 2. Like everything you display can only be either a pure black screen or a pure white screen.
Yeah.
You can't display anything else, and any sound has to be only silence or a certain sound. Yeah. So
I think there was a game that was commercialized on Steam that either spawned from that game jam or inspired or used the same theme as well. It's the black and white as well.
Oh, maybe.
I forgot what's the title. Yeah. Anyway, cool. So Chang Zhen, how about you?
I would say less than 30, around there.
Okay. So
My
most of it
favorite format
yeah.
would be Ludum Dare Compo, which is the same one that Shawn mentioned, where you had 48 hours to make a game from scratch alone. So the reason why I liked it, because as a student, you have to go to school from Monday to Friday, right? But the 48 hours is on Saturday to Sunday. So it's like a very nice thing that doesn't overlap with your studies. And also they have a well-established voting system. So if you go and play other people's games, it's guaranteed that people will play your games and give you feedback, and you can learn from them.
Yeah, good point. I think Ludum Dare, I mean, they organize like 3 times a year, if I'm not mistaken. Or 4 times a year. I can't remember anymore.
Cut down to 2, right? 2
Now
times a year
2,
now.
yeah, because of the pandemic and all that. But yeah, so yeah, I can imagine over the like since 2014, that's about 8 years. So you probably have not missed any Ludum Dare, Chang Zhen?
I have missed 1 or 2.
Yeah, probably because of family matters or festivals, right? Yeah. Cool. Sounds good. Yeah, I think there's also, I want to chime in a bit more on the format, right? So Hafiz mentioned about the 1 bit. You find it quite unique because the constraint that you have to work with. So coming back to the concept of the format and the kind of like the limits that game jam typically have, what do you like the most in terms of, is it the time constraint, is it the like thematic constraint, like the theme that they throw to us, or is it like the kind of like technical limitation, like the 1 bit thing, or is it which part of it that you kind of like find it pushes your creativity to go beyond norm? Because I think kind of understood that with limitation comes creativity, because without limitation, anything goes, anything works, anything's possible. But with constraint, you have to be really, really outside the box or creative to kind of like make an impact, because there's already a limit or a defined parameter. So anyone want to comment on that?
To me, the theme is not really much of a constraint, but just a starting point. So I usually start off with a piece of paper, write the theme there, and then it spreads out to something else. I would usually impose my own constraints just to like hit a particular objective that I want to achieve. Like, let's say I'm doing narrative. I want to do narrative, or I want to do an exploratory game. It has to have these these core pillars to make it an exploratory game, how I want to emphasize that core pillar. So the theme is, for me, is more of a starting point than a constraint, and you usually need to toss in more of your own just to find the game design that you want. But that's how it works for me.
Cool. Chang Zhen, Hafiz, any thoughts on that?
Like for me, I think the most useful part of the game jam is it's not really the theme, but just the fact that there is any kind of time constraint. Personally, I'm a kind of person where if you don't give me a deadline, like even though I say that I wanna prototype something, I'll never get around to it because there'll always be more important things. But if you're forced to take a weekend off because everyone's doing it and you can't do it later, it's kind of like an artificial deadline. Like it doesn't matter if you miss it, it doesn't matter if you don't join it, but it gives you an extra motivation to make sure like you make the time to work on this thing just for that period. Yeah.
And the calling to kind of make it happen now at the moment kind of thing. Yeah. But in that regards, do you prefer like a shorter, like a 4 hour, the 24 hours or 36, 48, or like the one global game jam now is like 10 days? Do you prefer it to be shorter so that it's like more constrained, right? Rather than,
Yeah. I've not done anything that was longer than 48 to 72 hours. I think C Game Jam was 3 days. Yeah. But not more than that. I think that's perfect because like you can realistically put aside everything else just for that. Yeah. Whereas it's hard to put aside everything for 1 week, right?
Yeah. So for any event organizer out there who want to organize game jam, the worst kind of game jam is basically a year-long game jam or lifetime-long game jam. That's basically not a game jam anymore. That's basically music on tour. Okay, Chang Zhen, how about you? What's specifically about it? Yeah.
I think the theme and the time both is what I like about the game jams, because the theme is there so that you can find something interesting on you. I usually, when I get the theme, I'll think of the typical ones and then I'll throw them away so that I don't do something that is generic, so that I can explore more interesting takes on the theme. So and then the time is also there, because the time makes you so that there's a point where you have to stop thinking and you have to start doing, which is something that I really appreciate, because I easily get paralyzed by decisions.
Okay, cool. Wait, I just want to poke a bit deeper on that. You mentioned that if you say that there's a team and you came up with 5 different ideas or 10 different ideas for it, so you're going to rate them like, I think this is common, this is something that people would normally do, this is something that common, and then the one that you say, oh, this is probably rare. Is that something that you kind of decision making on yourself, the idea?
Yeah, I think it's a constraint that I put on myself so that I don't want to do what I will first think of, because that will be the easy way. Okay,
cool. Touching on that, so I mean, since you are an expert at Ludum Dare with 20 plus sequence of it, right? How do you find the Ludum Dare kind of format of voting on the theme? Because the few ones that I participated, I felt like, oh my god, the theme that I like did not get to be picked, because you vote and then you're like, oh my god, it was the second, like in the top, the finalist, right? It's the second highest voted, and it didn't get to be kind of final. What do you feel about that process? Is it exhilarating for you, or you just don't care, just wait for the team to be announced by the end of it?
Usually I vote for the teams, but the ones I vote for usually don't get chosen.
Yeah.
So I don't really care about the voting anyway, because in the end, it's more fun to be surprised by the team and have to think about something new.
Yeah, so basically, because when you already like a team, you probably already have an idea. So now being forced to work on a team that you don't personally pick pushes your creativity a lot further. Okay, that's cool. So let's go to the game jam session itself. During a game jam, Chang Zhen kind of stepped into that territory already. For Shawn and Hafiz, how do you typically come up with the game idea? In terms of factors of choosing the type of project you choose to work on for the game jam, are you typically focus on new mechanics, team, tech, or everything? Shawn, probably you can describe differently. You mentioned when you work in a team, you tend to pick a skill set that you are weak at, kind of like practice on. But how about like Ludum Dare? What would be your kind of solution to kind of come up with ideas?
Usually it's the same thing. Yeah, I just find something at the time that I'm interested in exploring, and then I try to circle around that. But first important thing is to get away from the computer screen, grab a piece of paper and pencil and just sketch. So I would usually just sketch and brainstorm on my own. So it would spread from one thing to another. Like let's say the theme is water, I would just sketch whatever comes to mind without any filter. It could be rain, it could be acid, could be pee, right? So you just sketch out everything without filter and just try to hone in on like what elements can be interesting together. That's how I would usually do it. So I'm a very visual person because I come from an art background actually and taught myself programming. So I would draw out a mock-up of the entire game before I even do the design. So I visualize like how the game would look like, how it would play, then move on to the mechanics itself. Oh, Buzz, you're muted.
Then only you figure out the kind of mechanics, systems, and rules and all that, right?
Yeah.
Based on the mockup. Okay, we kind of took that into inspiration. If you see our Game Jam deck actually have one mockup screen, which helps when people pitch idea rather than say in words, draw how the game is going to look. Then everybody can imagine because we played enough games to kind of imagine as well. But okay, touching back to working with teams, specifically on unicorns on Unicycle, because those are a good project that you actually did in a global game jam, I believe, right? And it was a team with JT and a few others. How does that came about on that part?
Oh, okay. So
Because our
if you're
idea-
talking about the original game jam,
Yeah, the ideation on that.
yeah.
So that people can relate when we talk about commercialization later. So kind of like how that unicorn on Unicycle kind of came about in terms of when you were working with the team.
Okay, I think because we came in as a team and there was a house rule for Global Game Jam at the time that was hosted by you and Ivan that whoever comes to the team would have to randomize the name of the game, right? And I think it came out to something like, I can't remember what the theme name, the game name was. Was it something about unicycles, the quickening?
Yeah, the reckoning of
the reckoning,
the reckoning of unicycles, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, something about unicycles. So it started drawing anything the same way I described it earlier, right? So based on the title, there will be unicycles. What do you have? Something that's also a unicorn. Put a unicorn on a unicycle, and if they battle it out, what would it look like? So it sounded like a really like fun physics game. So we just made that.
Yeah, basically, okay. So you start with the unicycles. That's kind of the content that you need to build for the game because it's part of the title, and then you figure out what works on the unicorn, what works on unicycle, right? And somehow unicorn and unicycle and those things kind of that's I think interesting. Okay, Hafiz, how about you in terms of like ideation? How and if you can relate to A Dance of Fire and Ice, how that came about as well? Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I have a problem in that I'm very mechanically focused. So I don't look at polish at all. So I'm very, like, I think I might be the opposite of Shawn. If I can't find a good idea, I just won't work on it. So sometimes that works out well, sometimes it doesn't. Like sometimes I'll just take the whole day, it's like, oh, I don't have the good idea. So I'm just not going to even start. And sometimes it just, for example, for Ludum Dare, since you don't have to commit to be in the game jam, right? You can just see the theme and you can decide, do I want to join it or not? What I'll do usually is I'll just have like one eye on the theme and think for a while if I have a good enough idea to join. And then if I don't, I just won't join. Like I don't think that's a very good, like it's not something everyone should do, because the result is that I only make things that I'm confident in, and I think I lose out in kind of pushing out of my comfort zone. So what happens is for the team game jams, that because it has other people, I can't just say, oh, I don't want to do it anymore, right? So for those, I usually just like, even if the idea I'm not super hot on, I'll be like, okay, let's just do it. And like, it worked out for the C Game Jam twice. So twice we got second place, I think, in both the game jams, my team. But also it meant that after the game jam's over, like I knew that I didn't have enough confidence in the game idea that it would be able to be commercialized. So it was like, after it's done, you just leave it. So I think it really depends on what your aim is for the game jam. Like if you're going in the game jam with the express intent that you want to commercialize it later, then maybe doing what I'm doing is good for you. But then if you're doing it because you want to have fun, you just want to try, just pushing your boundaries, then you probably shouldn't do that.
Okay, cool. So in the case of A Dance of Fire and Ice, it was the mechanic that's already playing in your mind, and you just kind of like, hey, this kind of fit with the team.
So what happens is I have a notebook with like lots of mechanics, and then sometimes when I see the Ludum Dare theme, I was like, oh yeah, actually this fits really well with this old mechanic, but like I have to change it a bit. But I'll be like, oh yeah, actually. So it's not really like ideation from scratch. It's more like it's a chance for me to try out this idea for real and see if it's gonna work within a time frame.
Cool. Yeah, I know another game designers as well who have a notebook full of mechanics, ideas, and concept, and they're just waiting for the right time to kind of like pull it out of the kind of the treasure box and like, hey, that's time to work on it kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's different people have different focus and different needs and how they want to go about it. Chang Zhen, especially because you're probably the youngest and you're still studying and all that. So for you, what would be your main focus in terms of trying to achieve in a game jam? Would be just pure tech or mechanic or art style, or what do you want to do usually?
Okay, so since I'm not very artistically inclined and my writing is not that strong either, so usually when the team comes to me, I usually, the only way I can express it is through the mechanics. So usually I will tackle the team in the mechanic sense. And then usually, since it's a game jam, I will just, throw the code quality out the window because you need to get it done fast. And however, because I like to show off. So whenever I get part of the mechanics done, I try to polish it so that it looks presentable. And yeah, because of that, I think the way I work with people is a bit troublesome because when I do solo game jams, I always think of the mechanics and then I don't pen it down or anything. I just start working on Unity. So when I do team game jams, I actually struggle a lot to convey the ideas to other people. So usually what ends up is like my entire team has very different views on how the game looks like. And then we had to like fit the jigsaw puzzles together halfway through to make sure that we actually get the game done.
Yep, that sounds interesting because so one of the things of solo jamming is that the design doc or whatever is all on your head. You just need to prototype it out, and as a programmer, you can just kind of go and code and see whether it works or not. Sometimes it's harder to kind of go and open PowerPoint or Excel or whatever or docs to kind of pen down and then start taking in words, and sometimes communicating that might be less efficient than compared to just building a prototype and testing it out. But in a team game jam, because the work is kind of like done together, so I can imagine like artists already like drawing this thing and all that, and like, oh, that's not how the game's gonna work, kind of thing, and that's gonna be a conflict on that. Yeah, so I now I can understand where you're coming from in terms of focusing more on solo jams because it allows you to not do so much communication. But on that note, do you find having to communicate helps in your studies now, because you probably have student project that is team based as well? How do you find that being forced to communicate in game jams help or doesn't?
Yeah, I think it helps a lot because when you do like student projects, because I'm in DigiPen where we make game projects, it's very important that your entire team is at least like 90% in the same direction. Otherwise, you'll end up with like you're doing something and he's doing something else. Then when you put together, it's like you have to choose one or the other and you throw away someone's work. And then it's a lot of conflicts that you can actually avoid if you are able to communicate properly.
Bear in mind for everyone, feel free to kind of type in the chat any question. I'll just bring it on board when the time is right. We're just going to proceed. We have about 15 minutes more or less. Let's talk about the project. So when you completed from the many projects that you work on the game jams, how do you decide which project to continue to work on and have potential to be commercialized? And how do you validate that? Do you release it as a demo, see play feedback, or just purely based on gut feeling, you spend another 6 months on it to commercialize? Anyone want to start?
It's usually a gut feeling. It doesn't immediately become commercialized. The first game, not the first game jam game, but the first game jam game that I did commercialize was Velocibox, and that was incubating for 1 year in my mind after the game jam. So during that entire 1 year, I was thinking about how it would look like, how the monetization would be, or would it be premium? What are the progressions for the levels of life before it was actually realized? I think I only realized that the time was right after Flappy Bird started popularizing like really difficult games again. At the time, I think Super Hexagon was also at its peak. So I found like, oh, there's like the people have the appetite for this kind of games. That seemed like the right time to do it.
Yeah, you are not the only crazy people who like hard games, right? There are enough people out there who play this kind of game, right? So yep, Cool. Yeah, I guess that's a good the term that you use, incubating. So maybe for game jam games, it's not best to kind of work on it directly because you want to either to cook, kind of grow within you as you eat, or shower for the next 1 year, and also, and then you kind of like, hey, maybe now is the right time because Super has gone, it's hot. Maybe we can do something about it, kind of thing. That was more waiting for the right moment to kind of like pull it out of the hat as well, right? Hafiz, I think you have something to say as well.
Yeah, so A Dance of Fire and Ice. So that was 2014 August. Actually, I think that was the same game jam, my first game jam, as Chang Zhen's one, August 2014. The theme was Connected Worlds. Now I don't remember. So yeah, it was okay. So for that game, after I finished the game jam, I put it online, and then I saw a lot of people were playing it. So I put the game jam version. No, actually, I did like a post game jam version where I just, I think everyone does this where they kind of polish up all the little things or like fix the bugs and stuff. And then after that was done, I put it online, and then I could see that it was getting very popular. Like it got a few 100,000 plays on Congregate and those kinds of those kinds of websites and itch.io. So that was definitely like a motivation for me to continue to work on it, to commercialize it properly. Yeah.
And you did release an Android version as well, right?
I did. So what happened was, after the game jam version, I just basically, because it was out there already, I worked on like one new world, and then I just added it to the game. So I just kept working on small additions to the game and just kept updating the web version. And then when I felt it was enough, I sold it on Android for like $1. It got a few thousand sales, like not that much, but I was still in university, so it was still like a good motivation for me. And then 5 years later was when we actually released the Steam version, and that was like, it had like a few more worlds and extra editions. But yeah, it's the same for all our games so far. Actually, like, so for Rhythm Doctor as well, we start with the Flash version, online version, and we kind of keep adding to it and see if people like it, and then so everything starts off as like an MVP, I guess you could say, minimum viable project, and then we just keep adding to it and see if people like it still, and then eventually it becomes a full game.
Yeah, I think the one thing unique about your part of experience, actually, most of your game jams or your game demos is always released to public, right? From Rhythm Doctor to A Dance of Fire, somehow it is available for people to play. And is it true that you get more kind of like feedback and you kind of figure out what to do with it further? Does it help to release things for public?
Like I think mostly it helps, not only in the feedback but also in the publicity lah. Because like right now, I always see a lot of developers having a lot of trouble like getting people to play the game, and I think Ludum Dare #1 is really good because like Chang Zhen said, right, people are forced to play your game, so it will never be like no one plays your game, because if you play other people's games, like as the rule goes, they will play your game, so you'll be able to get some eyes on it. And then I remember the first like after the Ludum Dare game, A Dance of Fire and Ice got into some of these YouTubers compilations. So sometimes they have these YouTubers who play Ludum Dare games. And I don't think I would have been able to get this kickstart without a game jam like this, like a platform.
Yep, I think that's really good point in terms of like specifically Ludum Dare, because the culture, it's not a rule, but it's a culture that if you go and play someone else's game, that person should kind of like review your game as well. So kind of like that's kind of like the culture in the community, right? Chang Zhen, you want to add more on that?
I think when it comes to commercialization, my stories are more of like what not to do, because I didn't really do well.
Sure, that's even better.
Yeah, but when it comes to game jams, I think usually like the ideas that sound good on paper, when you actually do it in a game jam, sometimes you can straight away like feel like, oh, I don't think this can actually work out, which is like a good filter. And then after that, what I do is, if I like the mechanic and I think it has, I feel like I can add more stuff into it, then I'll just continue working on it. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's okay if you just want to commercialize it for the experience, like to learn how it feels to produce the game. But if you want to actually make it a commercialized success, I think it's better if you listen to the two professionals.
So I think there's a difference to commercialize, to get the experience of commercializing, versus making a living out of commercializing it, right? Because then the food on the table will be a question. But yeah, touching on your experience specifically, right? You mentioned that you learned there are certain things that it's a bit harder to do. Like, what about that part? Because you decided to make to commercialize Waker, for example, right? Because you felt that you can expand the content and create more mechanics, or use more the mechanics to create more level, more content, and all that. That's your parameter. What would be sort of like guidance for the future game jam that you're going to do as well in terms of decision?
I think in the future, I would follow Sean's advice, which is to let the ideas sit longer. Because for Waker, I think I was being too hasty. After like 1 month of just polishing the game, I just released it on itch.io, which is a bit difficult because at that point, I had no clear goal of what the game was going to be. It was all like very blurry. I had no set timeline. So whenever I feel like the game is almost done, it's actually not done. So I couldn't really finish the game.
Yeah.
And it's still not done. I got burnt out because there was no like schedule for me to stop and think about the game.
Okay. I think what happened if you continue too soon after the game jam, your mind and mentality is still, you are in the rush of the game jam, right? You just want to get it done and get it out, right? Versus like if you already sit on it for 1 year, right? When you look at it like, yeah, so you look at time and in a very different perspective. So I think that's a really good tips from Shawn that you could probably try for your future game jams. So speaking of commercializing game jam games to market, how much effort and time do you spend on it to get it to first commercial release, and what's some of the challenges and pitfalls that you can share with the audience who are interested to commercialize the game jam games? I think we can start with Hafiz, especially you have experience in terms of time.
Okay. Yeah. So again, Dance of Fire and Ice was like 4 or 5 years between the game jam and the final release. Well, I actually like. Okay, number one, Waker is a really good game. Chang Zhen's game. So like, I don't think he did anything wrong in terms of just like continuing to work on it, because even at Dance of Fire and Ice, right, I didn't really have a goal for when it would be finished. It was just like I kept adding worlds, and then I was like, oh yeah, actually maybe this is enough to start. But then even after release on Steam, we still added like so much more levels and content because the game wasn't like fully finished. I was gonna say so for the effort needed to commercialize A Dance of Fire and Ice, yeah, it always takes a lot longer than you might think. I think because you see, like, you make the prototype in 48 hours, and then people might play the final version and be like, oh, it's just like the prototype. Like, what's the difference? But actually, it was like 4 or 5 months worth of work full time. And the reason for that is when a game grows, there's always extra. I guess I call it scaffolding you need to take into account. Like the difference between, for example, a commercial game and a prototype is you want to have all the options, you want to have screen resolution. There's a lot of kind of like boring but necessary work that goes around making a prototype be at a good quality enough to sell. So yeah, number one is like resolution options, menus, because yeah, usually a prototype doesn't even have a menu, right? You just have like press space to start. But then
sometimes it doesn't even have an escape button. You have to alternate F4 to kind of kill it.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah. So I think it's just a lot more work than you might expect. Like, I always thought A Dance of Fire and Ice was going to be done by like a month or 2, but it always took like double the amount of time I thought it would.
Yeah. And okay, so on that as well, Rhythm Doctor is not a game jam game,
No.
but I think, can you share a bit on because the 5 years between the gap of 2014 when you did the game jam, you weren't working on Art of Fire or Dance of Fire and Ice per se, but when you activate it back and release it, what was that kind of goal for that as well?
That was interesting because what happened was basically Rhythm Doctor was taking too long, and we were like, I'm like, we're kind of a little burnout on finishing the game, so we wanted to do something small. We just wanted to have a switch of context so that all of us can feel a bit more energized again. So finishing Art of Fire was that thing that we did. So I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to stop from Rhythm Doctor. I'm just going to spend 1 month on Art of Fire first. So even at the start, it was just myself, but then I eventually got almost all of the whole team of Rhythm Doctor to join me at Art of Fire. Yeah. Oh, sorry. What was your question again?
Yeah, I think it relates to that because like Shawn said it for a year, you said it for almost 4 years plus or 5 years to kind of like reactivate it back. So I think the part that you say that because you're already working on Rhythm Doctor, which is a longer project, and it's already like multi-years of Rhythm Doctor development, and you felt like you are burning out, you want to get a fresh kickstart, and you want to just get something out quick. And that was where you can, hey, we have this other file that was already partially commercialized on Android, but there's still a lot more potential that we can keep building.
And also the other reason for coming back to it was we started to find clones of the game. So we were like, oh, okay, people are going to start cloning this idea. So that's one thing to, I guess, to beware if you take too long between your game jam and your commercial release, because if it's a really good idea, there will be people out there who want to copy it. Like I had one of my good friends, like he didn't know I made Otterfi. He saw it and he was like, oh, I'm going to clone this game. And then he found out it was me. Then I was like, oh no, I shouldn't clone this game because it's my friend. But if I wasn't his friend, he would have cloned it.
Okay, cool. That's a good tale to share. Okay, Shawn?
Sorry, the question was how do you commercialize
The challenge and pitfalls, and how long does it took the effort post game jam usually? Yeah, is it many months? Is it a year after to kind of continue developing and commercialize it?
Oh yeah. I was going to add right after Chang Zhen ended his saying that he should follow mine, because in contrast to mine, Hafiz pushed it out straight after game jam anyway. So I think for me the pitfalls is actually keeping the game under wraps for too long. In today's world, you really have to engage your community a lot, right? Every game developer has their own Discord community, and I think that's one weakness in WeirdWorks is that we've never invested in building a community much aside from war pods. We've never built a community around the WeirdWorks studio or the games that we were making. We've always kept it under wraps until it was time to put resources into marketing it. So that was like a really big mistake on our part. And I think Hafiz did the right thing in pushing out an MVP and getting people hyped up about the MVP, because the beauty of that is that it's so easy to add in like small, tiny quality of life updates, and people love to see that. They love to, some people love to see and read up on release notes and what's made the game better. It's also seeing the possibility of where the game can go. That way you can build a loyal fan base that will help you spread the word. I feel the Hafiz way is the way to go in the future, and that's where I plan to go to.
The community of players want to grow with you, right, and help you to kind of build the best game that they like already, right? Yeah, I think that's also a thing now. Yep. Chang Zhen, a quick one. Yeah. Any thoughts on that? I mean, Maker was about 2 years that you maintained. I saw the updates. There's about 2 years of update that you do alternately every 6 months or so. Yeah, how was that experience, kind of like supporting that game 2 years post-release?
I think I'll talk about something that is more relatable to younger people, younger game developers, which is because I started Waker at the lower skill level. So whenever I came back onto the project, I had to realize like, oh no, this one is not good, that one's bad. I have to like rewrite the whole thing like 3 or 4 times. Yeah, so it's like eventually the game was totally different from the game jam because I had to rewrite so many things to fit the requirements and match the result.
Okay, so yeah, because your skill improves over time. When you look at again the itch to kind of just rewrite everything and make it so much better, right? Yeah, that's something that you need to consider it as well. Cool. We only have one last question. I'm sorry. I'm gonna combine all of it as your final parting, kind of like sharing to everyone in terms of what are some of your best practices to share with everyone here, and looking back, what are the biggest factors to contribute how well you did commercializing your game jams, and also, do you still game jams, and what would be your advice for younger game jammers with regards to game jam and trying to commercialize their projects? Yeah,
that's a lot in one question. I'll talk about maybe building the game during the game jam itself. It helps to be prepared, of course, preparing the project beforehand and have the tools ready, but don't go exploring like tools that are completely new to you. Then you'd be focused on learning the tool rather than like building the game itself. And for me personally, I do try to aim for a full package. That means nothing must be missing, for me. It has to be a full package that I put out into the world, and because I don't plan to touch that game ever again after that game jam. So things like the title screen, even the game icon has to be there, all the music and sound effects, it has to be a full experience that you have to promise and deliver to the player by the end of 48 hours. And 48 hours is I think probably the best time. For me, I still do game jams. I look forward to doing Ludum Dare next. My last jam was also Ludum Dare, which I will just paste it in the chat. You guys can check out. That's when I started exploring exploratory game in 3D, exploration-based game. I had a lot of fun with that. Yeah, I don't think I'll stop game jamming anytime soon.
Cool. Hafiz?
Yeah, I guess to close, I just say that there's no game jam that I regretted doing. So every time I did a game jam, even though I didn't feel like while doing it, I was like, oh, am I really learning anything? But by the end of it, I always get something out of it. And it's great because you get a lot out of something for just such a small time period, right? So usually 2 days, I don't know, my usual 2 days in a week, I get, I don't know, a few bug fixes done. I do some meetings and that's it, right? But if you do a game jam, like you get so much more experience that's really useful and different from your everyday life. So like I would keep doing game jams, yeah, for sure. So Ivan had a question. Oh no, okay, no, I don't know how to answer that question. Never mind.
Yeah, touching on what Hafiz said, I think it's like in Dragon Ball when Goku went to this kind of like training room up high in the sky where the time is actually different. So within that 48 hours, you manage to cram so many. You get out of the world, you're like, oh my god, the world have moved so slowly compared to the amount of time you managed to put in within that training period of 48 hours of game jamming. Chang Zhen, your final words.
Okay, so I think the one good thing that I did for my commercialization was bringing it to all the conventions, letting it out, and showing it to people in the world. I think that really sort of helped me reach the audience, and it going to like physical game jams to meet people. I think that's without doing all those, I wouldn't be here speaking to everyone. I wouldn't have known that game development is a viable option for career. So I think for younger people, if you get a game jam, if you have the time to do it, I think just go for it. Even if you don't make something good in your eyes, it's a very good opportunity to meet other people and develop your skills and learn more about yourself.
Cool. Thank you, Chang Zhen. I think that's kind of like sums my thought as well in terms of game jam brings the human portion of it, the connection, the networking, the relationship. Sometimes you probably can find love in game jam. God knows, right? We'll never know. But anyway, thank you so much. I think we're running out of time. Ivan threw out one last question, but I thought the next panel was supposed to start like about 2 minutes ago. So we're kind of eating to that time. So Ivan, do let us know how should we proceed. Should we just go to Q&A?
4:30 that one.
Oh, 4:30. Okay,
Yeah.
I got the timing also. Oh, we have half an hour to bring us on question we got prepared.
I need to open the door for the next group.
Yeah, okay, let's spend about 10 minutes. So we go with the question from Ivan first. So if a team works on a viable idea during a game jam, but maybe not the entire team want to bring the game forward towards conversation, what conversation should go into that conversation? So I think Shawn probably can share that experience because he kind of took the genesis of the unicycle and then reincarnated many years after. So yeah, Shawn.
Oh yeah, just talk to you guys. So the main programmer for that game was one of my best friends from high school, and I just asked him if he wanted to. He said, "Yeah, just take it. Yeah, just take it and do what you want with it."
Yeah, give him a free copy after you complete it and ship the title. Yeah, that's a good token of session being part of the original genesis of the idea. I think in terms of legality, if Ivan was asking on that, because most of the game jam games, especially global game jam, is Creative Commons already. So essentially anybody in the team. In fact, after that game jam, if 5 of you in the team, all of you hate each other, but the game is still good, everybody went to commercialize on their own thing. You can still take the mechanic, the concept, whatever, but you need to recreate everything. every single piece of code, every single piece of art, every single piece of music must be recomposed and recreated. Then it's fine. Of course, the title is the one that you need to change as well. Yeah, that would be my advice to you if that happens to you. Of course, what Shawn did, invite them because they are part of the original idea. So maybe if they want to be on board with you, and Shawn have JT to work with, who is part of the original Game Jam team as well. So yeah, cool. Any other question?
Yeah, I think we didn't really touch upon this, but I think uh, games that do well in a game jam is not necessarily a game that will do well as a full game. So like it's important to know the difference. Like if even if you get first place in a game jam or something, you can see that sometimes maybe the game mechanic doesn't really support a longer game because that mechanic just works as a small game. So yeah, I think it's important to not think that if it does well in a game jam, therefore it'll do well as a commercial product.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and also, yeah, especially expanding on the game, sometimes it's more difficult to work if there's no progression or content that you can add on. But now there's also a movement of shorter games, right?
Yeah,
Of course,
that's true.
that is still being blocked by the Steam 2 hours refund policy, which is why everybody tried to build a game longer than 2 hours to kind of like not letting like people play the full game, complete it, get the full experience of it, and then like, hey, it's still within 2 hours, I can still refund. And that's a bit unfair to devs. It's happening now. I've seen few devs who actually made a game less than 2 hours, and people complete it. They were happy when they paid for it, but when they realized that it's refundable, they're just like, hey, it's my money. They think of it taking money from Steam versus taking money from the dev that they like the game for. So I think that was the bit of misconception some consumers have in terms of supporting their game developers making the product that they love to play.
Yeah. I think one really interesting example of a commercialized game jam is the game Inscription. I don't know if any of you have played it, but it's like a card game roguelike. It's done really well. But the interesting thing is that the game that he worked on in the game jam, like he didn't just expand the mechanics in a normal way. What he made eventually was a game that just had that part, the game jam part of the game, as a kind of like 1/3 of the actual full game. So that was pretty interesting because I guess maybe he knew that the mechanic in the game jam itself would not actually sustain a real full commercial game, but he was able to use that as a core of a kind of different game, but still having that as part of the game rather than just a bigger version of the same game.
Yeah, exactly. I've been asking, like, I think most of you guys, because you guys are very strong in mechanic-based game, maybe one day you can create a compendium of your kind of game, right? Because like Shawn have a lot of games as well that they can be compendium into one fun fair of kind of like, hey, I can go play all these your game jam games kind of thing. That's something I'll pay for. There's a question from Kaledo. I'm fascinated by the different perspective on game jams. I have one question though. Do you have to deal with frustration during the game jams? I think anybody want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think like what Chang Zhen mentioned, sometimes the idea that you wanted to pursue in a game jam just doesn't work out. And it has happened to me on like the 24th hour making the game. You realize, oh, this mechanic isn't really fun. When that happens, I'll just take a nap, I'll go to sleep, and come back with a new perspective in the morning. Just some rest would help. Will always help. Take a shower and sleep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other thoughts on that in terms of dealing with frustration?
Yeah, I agree with Shawn. I think usually like when you hear about 48 hours, you might feel like, oh no, I need to stay awake for like 2 days and make this thing up. But actually 48 hours is enough time for you to make something out and also get some good rest. And usually, like I think I got stuck on a lot of mechanics where I thought it sounded really cool. And then when I made it, it just doesn't work. Like no matter how I do it. So usually when that happens, either I just start fresh, like it's now a 48-hour game jam, or I just try to polish it and wrap it in a way such that it will work sort of good enough. Usually at that point, it's like, I'll just, all right, this is done. I'll just join another game jam.
Okay. Yeah. Call it off and then just like move on, right? Like Princess have said, let it go. Hafiz?
Yeah. Similarly, like in the last C game jam, I just took so long to come up with an idea that by the time I got an idea, it was like less than a day's worth of time to make the game, so I couldn't finish it in time. And I think that's fine. Like the thing about a game jam is like, all your success and failures are within a very small, tiny scope of time. So like nothing really spills out. If it doesn't work out, that's fine. There's so many other game jams.
Yep, exactly. I think that's the part I really like about game jam, because the pressure of time is real. The constraint of time, team, or technical limitation is real, but the pressure of being successful in 48 hours is non-existent, and supposedly, right? Because no one expect you to be successful in 48 hours.
Yeah. And like it's even better for Ludum Dare, because like you don't even have to tell anyone you're working on a game at all.
Yep.
So it's like if you don't, nothing happened.
Yeah, the worst case, you just can release it as a second Ludum Dare account, where all the junky games do not work games kind of go there. All the good games only go to main profile. But I don't know. My thoughts on that, typically for me, if the mechanic specifically doesn't work, it's not fun. Typically, I just go all the way crazy. Basically, I'll just start integrating things that does not make sense and just go all the way out of the world kind of like thing, just to have fun. So from making things work, I just want to have fun making it. So that's usually my way. And that typically happens kind of like midpoint on the second day in the middle of the night, where you kind of like, okay, next 12 hours not going to bring anything in to salvage this thing. Let's just go all the way down south, right? And have the 12 hours of fun doing whatever wacky ideas that you never thought of doing. And that's, to me, was the fun part. Yeah. Any other question? We can wrap it up. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This session will be recorded. It's recorded and will be uploaded later to the Global Game Jam Facebook page, and also I think Twitch account and all that. Thank you for everyone who attended. Hopefully you get a bit of learning and continue with your another 7 days of Game Jam for this Global Game Jam, which end on 30th with the theme of duality. Just to remind you,
10 hours, 10 days.
Yeah, there's still 7 days. Take a chill pill. It's 7 days, so you still have a long weekend. Of course, I understand it's very close to Chinese New Year, so if some of you will need to address family matters, yeah, now is the right time to kind of like crunch a bit, and next week you need to help to clean up the house and prepare with the festival celebration. If we don't see you, have a great Chinese New Year. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.